A crime so shocking that even after decades it continues to haunt and intrigue the world. A brutal murder, an investigation full of twists and turns, and a mystery that has never been solved. This is the case of the Black Dahlia, one of the most famous and macabre crimes in history. Today we will delve into this true story that seems to come straight out of a thriller. Get ready to discover the details that shocked a generation and understand why, to this day, no one knows who killed Elizabeth Short. Could the killer be among us? Or will this secret never be revealed? Don't miss it, because this story will leave you speechless. Imagine a young woman full of dreams, like many people you know. Elizabeth Short was like that, a 22-year-old girl who wanted to be famous, like a movie star. She had very dark hair, so dark that she earned the nickname Black Dahlia, inspired by a movie from the time. Elizabeth was beautiful, smiling, and loved to dress well, but her life was not easy. She grew up in a family with many problems and, like many people, went to Los Angeles to try her luck in Hollywood. She wanted to be an actress, but unfortunately her fate was very sad. In January 1947, something horrible happened. Elizabeth was murdered in such a cruel way that it shocked everyone. She was an ordinary person with ordinary dreams, but her name was marked in history for a crime that was never solved. And do you know what is sadder? To this day, no one knows exactly why this happened to her. Now get ready for a very sad and scary part of the story. On January 15, 1947, a woman who was walking through an empty lot in Los Angeles saw something horrible: the body of Elizabeth Short. When the police arrived, they were shocked. Her body was cut in half as if someone had used a very sharp knife. In addition, she had signs of torture, such as cuts on her face and signs that she had been tied up. The killer was very cruel and careful. He cleaned the entire body, removed all the blood, and left Elizabeth there, as if she were a puzzle put together in a terrible way. The crime scene was so terrifying that even the police, who had seen many bad things, were shocked. They knew that whoever did this was no ordinary person. The killer had a plan, he knew what he was doing, and he wanted to leave a message. But what was that message? No one knows. What we do know is that this crime was so brutal that to this day people wonder, how could someone do something so horrible to another person? And why has no one been able to find out who did it? Now let's talk about how the police tried to solve the Black Dahlia case. When Elizabeth Short's body was found, the Los Angeles police began a huge investigation. They wanted to find out who did it, but the problem was that the case was very, very difficult. For starters, many people started lying. Yes, lying. The police received hundreds of calls and letters from people saying, "I was the one who killed the Black Dahlia." But when they went to check, they were people trying to show off or cause trouble. Just imagine how hard it was for the police to separate the truth from the lies. Besides, the killer seemed to be very clever. He didn't leave many clues. The only thing the police had were some letters that someone had sent to the newspapers saying that he was the killer. In these letters, there were even newspaper clippings and photos. But even with that, they couldn't figure out who he was. And what's more, some people who knew Elizabeth said things that didn't help much because they didn't really know what had happened either. In the end, the police were left with a lot of information, but no answers. It was like trying to put together a giant jigsaw puzzle without all the pieces. And do you know what's worse? To this day, that puzzle hasn't been put together. Now let's talk about the suspects and the crazy stories that have emerged around the Black Dahlia case. When a crime this big happens, everyone starts to wonder, who would do something like that? The police investigated many people. For example, they looked at doctors because Elizabeth's body was cut up in a way that looked like it had been done by someone who knew anatomy. They also investigated men Elizabeth knew, such as ex-boyfriends, or people she had met at bars and parties. One of the most famous suspects was a doctor named George Hodel. Years after the crime, his own son said he believed his father was the killer. He even found recordings in which his father seemed to be talking about the crime. But even so, there was not enough evidence to arrest George Hodel. And that's where the conspiracy theories come in. Some people think the killer could be someone very important, maybe even someone from Hollywood, and that's why the case was never solved. Others think that the crime may be linked to other murders of the time, as if it were a serial killer. But in the end, all of these are just ideas. No one knows for sure who killed Elizabeth Short, and this makes the Black Dahlia case even more mysterious. It's like a thriller where the ending is never revealed. What do you think? Who could have done something so horrible? Let's talk about how the Black Dahlia case became big news and how it changed everything. Imagine that you are living in 1947. There was no internet, cell phones, or social networks. People only heard about the news through the radio, newspapers, and magazines. When Elizabeth Short's body was found, the newspapers wasted no time. They published photos, details of the crime, and stories about her life. Everyone wanted to know more about the Black Dahlia. The problem is that sometimes the newspapers exaggerated. They made things up or told stories that weren't true just to sell more copies. For example, they said that Elizabeth was a very different person than she really was. Some newspapers even called her a bad girl, which wasn't fair. All this attention made the case even more famous, but it also hindered the police. Many people started calling to give false information just to appear in the newspapers. And you know what's interesting? This was one of the first cases in which the media played such a big role. It was as if the Black Dahlia murder had become a spectacle. People were fascinated by the mystery, but also afraid that something like that could happen to them. And even after so many years, the case is still famous. It's as if it's never forgotten, always coming back in books, movies, and documentaries. Now let's talk about how the Black Dahlia case became a story that everyone knows, even if they weren't alive at that time. After Elizabeth Short was murdered, the case not only made the news, but also inspired many stories. Books, movies, series, and even songs were created based on this mystery. One of the most famous books is The Black Dahlia, written by James Ellroy. It tells the story of the crime in a way that seems like a suspense film, full of twists and turns. This book was so important that it even became a film in 2006, directed by none other than Brian De Palma, a very famous director. In addition, documentaries and TV series have explored the case, trying to discover new clues or present theories about who the killer could be. But why do people like this story so much? Maybe because it has everything that captures attention. Mystery, drama, a shocking crime, and an ending that has never been revealed. It's like a puzzle that no one has been able to put together, and that makes everyone curious. The Black Dahlia case has become a symbol of unsolved crimes, and whenever someone talks about it, people stop to listen. Have you ever watched a movie or read a book about the Black Dahlia? If not, now might be a good time to start. Now let's talk about the big question. Why was the Black Dahlia case never solved? Imagine that you are trying to solve a puzzle, but there are several missing pieces. That's more or less how the police felt. At the time of the crime, in OEA, 1947, technology was very different from today. There were no security cameras, DNA tests, or computers to help with the investigation. Everything depended on witnesses, physical clues, and a little luck. But in the Black Dahlia case, the clues were confusing. Many people lied, others gave wrong information, and the killer seems to have been very careful. He didn't leave much evidence, and what there was lost or not properly analyzed. In addition, time passed and witnesses died, memories faded, and the case grew colder and colder. Another problem was the number of people who wanted to come forward. Since the case became big news, many people made up stories just to get attention. This caused the police to waste time following false leads. And even with suspects like George Hoddle, there was never any concrete evidence to arrest anyone. In the end, the Black Dahlia case remained a big mystery. It's as if the killer had vanished into thin air, leaving everyone without answers. And until the case is solved, it will continue to be a story that fascinates and scares at the same time. So, did you enjoy learning about the story of the Black Dahlia? Scary, right? But this is just one of the many real stories that seem like something out of a horror movie. And you know what's best? I have many more mysteries, crimes, and intriguing cases to tell you. So if you like this video, keep an eye on the channel because every week there is new and suspenseful content. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video so you don't miss anything. And you, what do you think happened to the Black Dahlia? Leave your theory in the comments. Until the next video, and remember, the world is full of stories that will make your hair stand on end.